an absent parent, an emotionally detached parent, an immature parent, a negligent parent. They all exist. I never wanted in my entire career to have to address a parent and say, you are a negligent, uninvolved, emotionally detached parent. Not all parents are bad, right? And I think that's what keeps us believing that a parent only brings a child into the world to love it, to raise it, and to support it. But the reality is that some people end up pregnant, out of wedlock, and they have no other choice but to take care of the baby. Their conscience couldn't withstand, giving the child away for adoption or into the foster care system, so they raise them. Or, like most parents who I previously saw for therapy, I saw a lot of parents who went to Planned Parenthood, went to different agencies for single parents, has been through divorce and post-relationship chaos, domestic violence, even moving from one country to the next, and these kind of children, they're dealing with a lot of pressure. The parents don't know what to do to help them, but there's always this foundation of love still there, right? That I'm going to do any and everything I need to do to love and help my child. But when a parent is emotionally immature, detached, emotionally unavailable, it has little to no impact, I'll put it that way, on the parent. The parent could care less. It has the bigger impact on you. Whether you're a child, an adolescent, an adult child, an emotionally detached parent can affect you for the rest of your life. In some ways, emotionally detached and immature parents simply just don't care. And that is a very cold, straight to the point way of discussing this topic, but it is a topic and it is a point that needs to be made. So a parent who simply doesn't care, which right here, I'm going to post the thumbnail for you to see, is a video that I did a couple years ago. You may want to go check that out when this video is over. But a parent who just doesn't care, they don't do anything for your betterment. They do any and everything for their own. And sometimes their own and their partner's benefit and not yours. An uninvolved, detached, neglectful, and immature parent has one important goal, which is to meet their own daily needs, their own emotional, psychological, social, sexual, basic needs. That's all they care about. You don't exist. Sometimes it's simply a failure to act, that creates the problem. Some research suggests, especially in the realm of child abuse and neglect, that a failure to act is just as bad as doing something that's abusive, right? So some adult kids are physically assaulted by their parents, verbally assaulted by their parents, emotionally manipulated by their parents, emotionally and psychologically neglected, and the parent is over there in la la land, drinking alcohol, smoking dope, prostituting, gambling, doing everything they want to do over there on their own and for themselves, and your needs are minimized. But what makes this worse is sometimes a failure to do what you're supposed to do as a parent of a child, of a teenager, or even an adult child is just as bad as the abuse. A failure to protect, a failure to love, a failure to guide, a failure to support your every need is just as bad as being abusive. And this is something that I tell my clients all the time. When I see child emotional neglect, when I see child abuse, I have to explain to them that this is just as bad. Failing to act is just as bad as doing something that's abusive. These kind of parents also have a ton of psychosocial stressors and vulnerabilities. They don't have social relationships that are healthy. They are in romantic relationships with multiple partners. These parents end up being a part of a whirlwind of confusion. And sometimes there's open marriages that are involved in this, right? Sometimes the kids end up taken off of these kind of parents and they end up in the foster care adoption system and they get lost in the system and the so-called parent doesn't know where their kid is. I once had a situation where my 25-year-old client a couple years ago was smoking marijuana. She was high on alcohol. She did vodka, marijuana, and she also did meth and cocaine. And she was high on all of those substances when she got pulled over by the police. The police took her children immediately into custody, arrested her, hit her with a bunch of charges, which the judge cemented. She went on probation. Her kids remained in the foster system. They were later adopted, and the children don't know where mom is, and neither does mom know where her children are. They are separated. They have no idea where they are. This family, adopted family that took her children and raised them for themselves, could be over in another country for all we know. But this particular client contacted me one day last year and said, I don't know where my kids are. I miss them. I want to be a mom. And I simply explained this to her. You were a mom for the time that you carried your children. You were a mom for the delivery process, but you were never a mother after that. And because of that, your children have now been taken away from you. It's a closed adoption. You can no longer reach them. You don't know where to look to find them. Leave them alone and try to help yourself. Try to figure out how to get yourself up. If you so happen to have another child, you need to be a better mother. And so she took that advice. So I hope she's still taking that advice today. But she's a prime example of what happens in these situations. Consider parents who do not care as ignoring your very existence. Parents who do not care ignore your very existence. Threats, manipulation, triangulation, pitting siblings against each other, right? Putting you in a triangle within the family, putting, burdens upon you, parentifying you, making you a parent to your siblings, adultifying you or causing you to engage in adultification, meaning that you've grown up too fast, right? These things can also be a part of this puzzle. It doesn't always have to be a parent who's uninvolved, detached, or emotionally immature. It could be that the parent is putting on your shoulders way too big of a responsibility way too soon. These kinds of parents tend to want a modified family system. They don't have what it takes to be a parent. They don't have the desire to be a good parent. Their addictions and their problems and their moods and their mental illnesses and their personality disorders takes over in such a way that they don't even realize that they are being relied upon by children that they have brought into this world, no matter how old you are, right? You could be 60, your mom could be 80. She still has a responsibility to guide you, lead you, love you, care for you, and the list goes on. And when he or she doesn't do that, right, as a parent, then that's a problem. These parents often want modified family systems, meaning that, okay, I may be a mom, but I'm still going to party. I once had a client say to me, I'm still going to party, I'm still going to get me a man, and I'm still going to do my dope. But I am a mother because I do laundry, I cook, I take them to school, I put them in extracurriculars, and she was very proud. But was she the mom with Daisy Dukes on in a crowd at her son's basketball game, screaming and yelling because she's high on drugs, had a little bit of wine before she went, and got behind her car and wrecked and got a DUI and had to go to jail for about 6 months? Is that the kind of mother this was? Absolutely. And she was not an available parent, right? She figured and said it to me in such pride and arrogance. She felt that she had the right to do what she wanted to do. And so these kind of parents are also detrimental. If you feel like you have been a victim to a parent like this, or you know somebody who's going through this, you definitely want to keep on watching. Let's jump right into some of the common issues, okay? Some of the common issues with these parents is that they are very entitled, most of them. They feel They feel like, they deserve what it is that they want to do. I deserve to smoke drugs. I deserve to have some wine. I deserve to unwind and relax. I deserve to have as many men or women as I want. I deserve to do what I want to do. And that deservingness, that attitude of entitlement gets in the way of their judgment. And then they become a very difficult kind of a parent for the child that they have brought into this world. They tend to have poor responsiveness to the needs of their children, adult children, teenagers, and children, right? They have a very poor responsive time frame as well. It's just like a baby sitting in his crib crying or her crib crying, and the parent takes about an hour to get up and see what's wrong. And so this kind of happens as well for teenagers and adults. You may have a parent that doesn't respond to your text messages for days. You may have a parent who doesn't answer the phone for many months, right? And all of a sudden the holidays come around and they're ready to talk to you. So they have a very poor responsive time. They also have this I don't care about your needs disposition when it boils down to it. They may try to put forth this motherly and fatherly kind of disposition and persona, when the reality is that they are narcissistic, they are cold, callous, and uncaring. And so all they really want is their own life. They want their drugs. They want their women. They want their men. They want their fun. They want their partying. They want all things that makes them feel good and wonderful inside. You are not a part of that, right? That kind of X you out of the equation, whether you realize it or not. It may hit you when they don't answer your calls, don't answer your texts, pick up the phone drunk or high, right? Puts a man or a woman before you. The list goes on. These are not parents. They are men and women who became parents genetically, biologically, right? And physically. But that's about it. These kind of parents have multiple partners, right? They tend to have a lot of post-separation chaos, meaning that they fight with their partners when they say goodbye to them. There's often divorce battles and court battles and domestic violence and threats. The list just goes on. I could just go on and on and on. There's never any calm with these kind of parents, They also may use their mental illness as a crutch. They may also use their mental health challenges as some kind of an excuse to act as if they are. Oh, I only hauled off and smacked you in the face and kicked you and tripped you because I have anxiety. I have bipolar disorder. I have narcissistic personality disorder. My feelings are my feelings. My ego's fragile. I once had a client do that. She was screaming in my office. This was many years ago before I got into private practice. She was screaming in my office, yelling. I had security outside of my office door. I had my male coworker with me in the room, and she's just screaming, how dare you say I'm not a good mother? I am a good mother. I may have been on drugs for years. I may have prostituted my body. I may have, sold all our things, and I may have sold my daughter to a pimp for money and drugs, but I'm a good mother. I know I'm a good mother. And she's going on and on and on and on and on. And when my male coworker that was sitting next to me decided to step up and really take control of her, because she had started knocking books off the shelf and trying to flip over a shelf and really trying to get everybody intimidated by her, my male coworker stood up and said, you know what, you're a terrible mother and you're a terrible example. You don't have the right to tear up this place. You don't have a right to be this way to your therapist. You don't have a way to act. You don't have a right to act this way in front of the police and me, and the list goes on. And she said to him, you know what, I have bipolar disorder and I also have borderline personality disorder, so I have a right to be this way. She trashed most of the community center that I was working in. She went to the front and tore up everything in the front desk. She went to my coworker's room and tore things off the walls. She was arrested, apprehended, charged, went to court, spent 6 months to 10 months in jail, if I'm remembering correctly, and then she went to a mental institution for a year. She was a very unstable woman, but the number one thing that she said to me and to my coworker who was talking to her is, I deserve to be this way. I deserve to feel like this. I have bipolar disorder and I have borderline personality disorder. How dare you try to apprehend me? That's disturbing, right? She definitely used her mental illness and her personality disorder to do what she wanted to do, and that was intimidate That was to put fear in other people and to bully them and intimidate and harass them. So what kind of parenting styles could you have grown up under? Well, let me throw some things out there. There's 4 common ones. There's authoritarian, authoritative, there's permissive, and then there's uninvolved. We're talking about the uninvolved parent right now. So you already have down what that is. The authoritarian parent is a Hitler. You're going to do what I say, and you're going to follow my directions. Don't ask me any questions. Don't argue with me. Do what I say, or I'm going to hit you, or I'm going to take that away from you. That's authoritarian. There's no flexibility. There's no fairness, right? Now, if we look at authoritative, we're talking about a parent who can still use corporal punishment to a certain degree. They can also be very firm to a certain degree, but they also know when enough is enough, and they give you flexibility. There's some gray. They know how to kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Compromise with you. They know how to cooperate. You know how to cooperate with the parent, right? Things are wonderful. And then the permissive parent is the parent who just kind of sits back and lets her kids run all through Walmart and Target and trash it up and curse and bump into people and be disrespectful and dishonest, but they still believe they're a good parent. Why? Because they buy their kids everything. They do everything their kids want. They give their kids everything they want, right? They give them an allowance. They allow them to just terrorize the community because that's my little Johnny boy over there and I want him to be okay, right? That's a permissive parent. And then, of course, that uninvolved parent. Now, there's some research that suggests that an uninvolved parent has the attitude of, you're my trophy child, so stand there, look the part, be the part, right? And then there's also prioritizing themselves above their children. There's self-centeredness and egotistical behavior. There's absolutely no guidance in these kind of parents' lives. And there's a lot of miscommunication and limited communication because they never learned how to be a parent. So how does this impact you? Well, it impacts you in a variety of ways. Let's start with clingy behavior. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, codependency, and traumatic bonding are 4 things that you are likely to experience that makes you clingy to people who remind you of a good mother, to your therapist, to your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, right? Clingy behavior. It's like, save me, I need your love, because my mom and my father was never really the parent I needed. You may also notice a chaotic lifestyle and relationships in your own world, right? If you grew up with a parent like this, your life is probably chaotic, right? And your childhood was definitely chaotic. And you may take some of the behaviors and the attitudes and the mindsets and the mental illnesses from that situation that's traumatic and brought it into your adult life, right? And so chaotic is probably a part of your life and relationships to a certain degree. Mental illness for yourself, right? Personality disorders. Sometimes antisocial personality develops. Sometimes avoidant personality develops. Sometimes borderline personality develops, right? Because you were so invalidated and hurt and you grew up in chaos and emotional turmoil. And so over time, the brain says, you know what? I need to learn how to adapt. I need to be resilient. And so I'm going to develop all of these skills over here, even though they may be maladaptive. I'm still going to develop them so that I can survive. And that can be borderline personality disorder. It could be narcissism. It could be antisocial. It could be obsessive compulsive personality. Whatever the case, sometimes the development of a personality disorder occurs. You may also notice that you have experiences with emotions that are extreme. One day I'm really angry and I'm full of hostility. The next day I swing to this pole because I'm really happy and I'm really friendly. Some days I'm in the middle and I'm just blah, right? Sometimes I'm gray, and sometimes I'm really black, and sometimes I'm really yellow, right? Just to kind of give you a visual of this, right? Yellow's positive, black is depressed, and gray, of course, is just kind of say so or so. I think that's the word, so. Parental alienation and adultification has happened to you, so you most likely are still suffering with that. How do I step out of those roles and just be the adult child? There's also conflict-driven moods that you might find yourself in, right? Some days you may feel like you just want to fight, argue, snap, scream, throw things around, and then you're going to feel okay. Complex PTSD is likely to develop, right? One trauma after the next trauma after the next trauma, and that's not good. Poor cognition and also family estrangement is something that's also likely to happen in your world, right? And being the victim of maybe another parent, right? Maybe the dad, maybe the mom was uninvolved, but the dad is involved and he divorced, and now he's trying to force you to be in his new family and to accept step parents and to accept step siblings, and you don't want to do that, right? So being forced to change your mind, being forced to do what you don't want to do, that's all a part of this puzzle as well. Stay tuned with me on Friday and Saturday. I will be live. I'm going to be talking more about these dynamics, so join me then. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.